You think you know media bias. You think the Mirror or the BBC are the problem. Well, think again, because a former cabinet minister, Nadine Dorries, just publicly claimed that one of the most infamously device, error-prone tabloids in the UK is actually the standard bearer for truth and compliance. And she said it with a straight face. This isn't just a bad take, it's an absolute insult. This is the paper that runs 47 stories about shoes and then cries integrity. The same publication with a rap sheet of libel settlements long enough to wallpaper a small flat. But here she is telling us this is the gold standard.
In terms of its news reporting, the Daily Mail, I'm a columnist, I don't report the news in the Daily Mail or the Mail on Sunday. But if you look at the way the news is reported, the Daily Mail will tell the story that maybe other newspapers such as The Guardian and The Mirror don't tell. Of course, it's always been the case that with newspapers, they have
a point of view.
A point of view, yeah, and it will tell the story from that point of view. But all of them are held to a certain standard of reporting and have to comply. This is the whole reason why we had the Leveson.
But that's true of the BBC. I mean, the BBC has tighter regulation than newspapers do. I mean, the BBC has this regulation, and I suppose its defenders would say, as a result of it, it generally gets most things correct.
Yeah, nobody is calling for the heads of the Daily Mail, though. No one at the Daily Mail has ever had to resign. It's happened a number of times at the BBC. In fact, the executive, as I said, whose name escapes me now, who doctored the Queen video, he had to resign. It's happened a number of times at the BBC. And you now have the two most senior executives at the BBC who've had to resign, not for the first time. It's, the BBC has been caught out time and time again for misreporting news and for doctoring and corrupting the news. That's the difference between the news and the standard of newspapers, who I think are possibly held to a higher standard. It's by the regulatory bodies and others than maybe broadcasters are. But that's just my personal opinion.
I can only assume that Times Radio got her on as a bit of a joke, because she managed to find a way to make the Daily Mail sound like the Vatican of journalism. Apparently they're the ones telling the stories the Guardian, the Mirror won't. Probably because the Mirror doesn't usually run front page exclusive about Meghan Markle's breathing too loudly. And then she says all newspapers are held to certain standards. Compliance, regulations, the Leveson inquiry, which is quite funny really, because the Leveson inquiry literally happened because tabloids like the Mail couldn't keep their noses or their voicemails out of people's private lives. But no, in Nadine's world, the Mail is pure. It's the BBC that's the real problem. Apparently no one ever calls for the heads of the Daily Mail, she says. Right, because with the Mail, you can resign in disgrace as Prime Minister and get promoted to writing another 600 words about a weight loss drug. She points out the BBC executives have had to resign for mistakes, which is true. But at least it shows accountability. The BBC makes a blunder, people actually take responsibility. When the Mail gets it wrong, it buries their apology on page 27 next to a 2-page spread of "Is your cat secretly left wing?" And that's not to mention how they've paid out millions in libel. They've printed stories they've had to retract, apologise for and rewrite. If it held to standards means held to account by High Court, then yeah, I suppose so. Honestly, if the Daily Mail were the benchmark for truth, we'd all believe that judges are the enemies of the people, immigrants are stealing Christmas, and 14 days of front page coverage for a completely legal curry was justified. So next time Nadine Dorries starts defending journalism, just remember, this is coming from someone who thinks balanced reporting means printing whatever's convenient for her side of the story. But we know what the media's like at the moment. It's complete gutter trash, which you can see more of it in the video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.